All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Millennials World podcast. And you know what, Brian? I've been thinking, right? Last week we, of course, reviewed Before Sunset, your favorite movie of all time, and
I
my
loved
least
it.
favorite movie of all time.
Yeah, we
And
really got heated about it
we
because I
did.
liked
I
it
was
so
like, this movie
much.
fucking sucks. And Brian was like, oh my God, this is the most emotional, beautiful movie ever. And I'm
It,
like,
it,
you're
it,
gay.
it was almost the end of the show.
Yeah, it really was. We were intense about it. But, speaking of calling your best friends gay, I thought to myself, is there another Richard Linklater movie that is about hanging out with your cool friends back in your small hometown? And would you believe it, Brian? There is.
Yeah, it's called Boyhood.
Which, spoiler alert, is a movie we are going to review eventually. Who knows
We'll
when,
have
but we
to.
will certainly review it. But until we get to that point, let's review a movie about hanging out with your cool hometown friends. So this week, we're going to review the fantastic Richard Linklater movie, Suburbia. But before we get into our review this week, Brian, let's bring back our segment,
Yes.
Cringe Generational Cringe Millennial Moment of the
Cringe! Millennial! Moment! Week!
Week! Woo! Yeah!
Oh.
All right, so Brian, of course, this is your week because this is your episode. You
Yes.
sent me a fantastic
Oh.
TikTok song, which is awesome.
Yeah, let me set the stage a little bit. I've learned it's a TikTok song. I saw it on YouTube Shorts, which is, I guess, functionally the same thing. It's by a band called Mind Seed, first of all. So, great name, very cool. Mind Seed. The song is called Fake Friend, parenthetically, Fucktard. So I've been thinking about this song for like a week and a half now. Musically, it's pretty bland, right? It's pretty forgettable. It's very local band. It's very online music. Kind of sounds like this weird mix of like skate punk and post grunge. Who would I say it reminds me of? It reminds me of like musically The Offspring or the Foo Fighters. That sound about right? What do you think?
Yes, I would
But
say so. It's very like 90s pop punk
radio
inspired.
rock.
Yes.
Yeah, but it's not even quite like that, right? It's a little more like, yeah, it's this weird mix of like pop punk and like post grunge to me. The verses are kind of just general vague angst. The chorus is amazing. The chorus to the song is, fuck you, you're a fake friend, a fucktard. Backstabbed again by a retard. Fuck you, fuck your dog too, you're a fake friend, fuck you. This is completely unironic. I double checked because, we had a kind of self-aware song last week. Still a pretty bad song, but it was self-aware and we gave it its due for that. So I double checked. Mindseed does not seem to be making fun of Reddit humor, like Reddit talk or whatever. This guy straight up wrote a song about fake friends and fucktards and how mad they make him. And was just like, this is for all of you. And here's the deal. More people make fun of it than not, but a lot of people like it. He gets a lot of positive feedback. This is his most popular song. He's fucking killing it. And I just can't stop thinking of the phrase, and forgive me, like this is not like a thing I just say all the time, like I cannot stop thinking of the phrase backstabbed again by a retard. Because what situation is the singer in Mindseed getting himself in? Like,
Which by the way, though, Brian, to be clear, even before we get into the synopsis of this movie, that is a situation that would happen to the
Yeah.
losers in this movie.
Yeah, exactly. They're constantly getting outwitted by a mentally disabled person. Like, you've been backstabbed again by a retard? What's going Like, okay, so this guy, I'm pretty sure, the guy in Mindseed, pretty sure he's a millennial. A quick cursory glance at his Mindseed social media indicates that the band formed in 2013. He looks like a millennial. He's not quite Brendan Brutal aging emo, but he's kind of got that going on, aging Hot Topic guy. And I'm just thinking, imagine, Taylor, you're in a situation where you're talking to like a 30-something-year-old, like, Hot Topic guy. And that's, sure, kind of awkward, but whatever. We're both, everyone's kind of awkward. You're talking to this aging, wannabe rocker guy from the Hot Topic, and this, like, very good-natured handicapped person walks past you, and you're thinking to yourself, you go like, oh, it looks like he's having a good day. And this Hot Topic guy says, you shouldn't fuck with that guy. He betrayed me. And you, in your head, you're looking at this scene guy, and then, this disabled person, and you're thinking, like, he betrayed you? And then he says, hey,
And I'm sorry,
hey.
you just see him with his almond eyes drooling.
Yeah. He's like drooling, he's like holding a balloon. He's like leaving the circus or something. And the scene guy goes, hey, I'm right here, buddy. How about I turn around? At least you can take the knife out. And the disabled guy's like, hi, Greg.
Just the idea of like some guy is like, that's the last time I let Timmy borrow my fucking cookies. He ate all my fucking cookies.
Yeah. What happened? You're just sitting there going, what the fuck happened between these two? And that's the whole song. It is literally, he has said, this is a song about fake friends. It's called Fucktard. But he also says retard in it. I didn't just say that for fun. And people, there are comments going, yeah, I hate the fucktards in my life. That's why I love to blast this song. I feel like being betrayed implies that you've been manipulated to me, that you've been outwitted, outmatched.
Manipulated by somebody with a 55 IQ.
Yeah! Which, given the type of music that Mindseed makes, seems possible.
Yeah.
And, I'd already decided, we did Linklater last week. We've talked about doing Linklater for a while. Like, important, very Gen X pivotal, Gen X elder millennial influence. So we did Before Sunset last week, and I'd wanted to do Suburbia for a while. And this led right in. And discovering this song about fake and manipulative friends, well, coming up to the Suburbia episode, it just all came together really perfectly.
No, absolutely. And, speaking of, I think it leads perfectly into the details here. So, once again, this is Suburbia. Came out in 1996. And the first trivia fact I have here is Sonic Youth wrote the song Sunday for this film in 1996. A re-recorded version of the song appears on their 1998 album, 1,000 Leaves.
And I think they also do any incidental music that you hear throughout the movie.
Yes, and I believe you said there was a Skinny Puppy song in here, right?
There's a lot of cool songs, a lot of cool Gen X songs in here. It's not an original Skinny Puppy song. It's from their album Colt. It's just like whenever I watch this movie, I forget that it's in there and I go, oh yeah, Skinny Puppy's in this. Like 96 was a brief moment in time where Skinny Puppy were on a mainstream, like a studio film soundtrack,
Yeah, with fucking Steve Zahn and Giovanni Ribisi movie.
Yeah, you're like, good for them, man.
Yeah. This movie was rated R. It was directed, of course, by Richard Linklater. It was based on the play of the same name by Eric Bogosian, and the screenplay was by him as well. And the next trivia fact I had here is this movie is based in the fictional town of Burnfield, Texas, which is in part based on Woburn, Massachusetts, Eric Bogosian's hometown. Although, I believe this movie was shot in Austin. I could be wrong about that, but I believe this was shot in Austin. And it was produced by Anne Walker McBay. And, we mentioned Richard Linklater's output on Before Sunrise, so listen to that episode. And Eric Bogosian is an American actor, playwright, monolinguist, novelist, and historian, and he's most known for being involved with way more things than I can list here. Like, dude has been involved in a lot of movies that, even a couple I've seen, but I'd never fucking heard of this guy in my life before recording for this episode. And Anne Walker McBay is most known for, once again, working with Richard Linklater, as we mentioned on the last episode. The movie is about 121 minutes long. It did not have a listed budget, but it grossed about $656,000. And on Rotten Tomatoes, it has a 68% critic score and a 68% audience score. So not nearly as beloved as Before Sunrise.
This is my favorite Linklater film by far. I think I mentioned previously on the show, I have really mixed feelings about Linklater. I think there are things he does really well, feelings he captures really well. He also just has tendencies as a writer, particularly in his dialogue, that drives me crazy. This particular film, I think, because it takes place on a pretty small scale, and also just like for the types of themes I'm interested in, for the types of characters I'm interested in, and honestly, like similar to your experience with our last film, just like things like experiences I've had directly in my own life make me kind of more inclined to really respond to this than I do most of his work. There's still dialogue problems for me, but for me, the things that he does really well and the things he does that are kind of annoying, the extreme Gen X-iness of his work, it's all encapsulated in Suburbia. For me, it's almost like a pivotal Linklater film, maybe even more than Dazed and Confused, in both good and bad.
Yes, I would say so. Like, Dazed and Confused is very much a pastiche of, like, baby boomer nostalgia through the lens of Gen X, while this is extremely contemporaneous Gen X view into the Gen X ethos and life.
Yeah.
To the core.
It is, and it does that. Like, you watch this and you go, oh, this is so fucking Gen X. It's also, like, kind of self-aware of that, and it's kind of, well, genuinely being that, it's kind of, like, I think it's kind of reflective of that, the kind of malaise and the, I don't know, ambiguity and things. It's kind of, like, looking at that and not necessarily being critical of it, but, like, going, like, okay, well, why are we like this? Why are so many of our young people disaffected and unmotivated in this way,
Yes, exactly. And speaking of, I think at least perfectly into our synopsis here. So the movie begins in 1996, 3 years out of high school in the fictional town of Burnfield. Once again, four friends are in their daily habit of hanging out and drinking by the garbage dumpster of a corner convenience store, occasionally taunting the Pakistan-born owners and operators. Which, by the way, Brian, I don't know about you, it wasn't so much the racism part, but I will say this was basically my high school experience. We would get out of lunch and slightly after school and just hang out at the local abandoned like old Chinese grocery store, and we just fucking do shitty bits to each other, and half of them would smoke, and I'd be like, that's disgusting, and then I'd go home for the day.
Well, and not just for me, like that in my high school experience, but for me, so I had about a year and a half before I moved out of my mom's, maybe even 2 years between high school, because I was a super senior for a semester, and so all my friends left, and I was there for 6 months, and then I just did nothing. I just stayed at my mom's and dicked around with my few friends that were still in town and got high and was mad that I was still there. Obviously, I didn't have to deal with as much of like hearing my friends say racist shit as the protagonist in this movie. I shouldn't say he has to deal with it. He doesn't really deal with it. But, you know, a theme of this movie is that our main character, his friends are like ambiently racist or sometimes like actively and hostilely racist, and he doesn't like it and he doesn't know how to confront it. I didn't deal with as much of that because the town I lived in was so small that there weren't really any non-white people.
Yeah, I think, well, obviously I won't get too into the weeds of it, but I know you mentioned there was like one black kid in your small town.
That was in high school, and he ended up, that's a whole different story. He ended up, there were these kids that were harassing him every day, and one day he like at lunch, they were, you know, you can imagine what they were calling him, and they'd been this week going on for a while, and he knocked one of the fucking kids out. And then he got kicked out of school and ended up moving back to whatever town he was in. And I remember going to school, and like the whole school, including teachers, being like, yeah, I can't believe that he knocked that kid out. And I was saying, like, well, he was like calling him like racist stuff, like he was saying slurs to him and shit like every day. And they were like, yeah, but he shouldn't have done that. And I was like, well, I don't know, what was he supposed to do?
Yeah, just tolerate the harassment until it got worse. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, exactly. And it had been getting worse, like instead of like escalating, you know.
Exactly. So
that's a little bit of a tangent, but
no, it's all right. And of course, once we get to the end of the synopsis here, our Pakistan-born owners, I think, definitely kind of win out in the end because they lose, because the friends lose. But we'll get into that at the very end, obviously. But so the main character, Jeff, played by Giovanni Ribisi, and I think this was like his third movie ever, which is insane because he's fantastic in this movie. He's
very
so
young.
good.
Or he looks very young in it, at least.
I think he was 21 or like 22, maybe even 20 when this was made. So
he looks young. He looks about 21 to me.
You know what's hilarious is that he looks like fucking Billy Joe Armstrong, which I know is not, I'm not the first person to make that observation, but he looks exactly like Billy Joe Armstrong.
His facial expressions, right? His like facial mannerisms and his facial tics kind of have some overlap with Billy Joe.
Oh, absolutely. He is an aimless soul, unsure of his future since dropping out of college. He is dating Suze, played by Amy Carey, a student at the local community college who plans to leave Burnfield and study visual arts in New York City. Jeff's best friends are Buff, played by Steve Zahn, and Tim, played by Nikki Katt. Tim recently honorably discharged from the Air Force, which is shocking to me because he's a bad man. Of course, we'll certainly get into that.
And that's part of, like, just to lay out the dynamic with, like, Buff and Tim and Jeff, right, is because Tim left, even though he's back, and being in the military probably isn't what Jeff would want. Jeff, like, because Tim managed to get out, he is kind of, like, deferent to him. And also because, like, Tim has sort of, like, performed some level of masculinity that Jeff probably wouldn't be capable of or wouldn't have interest in. So he's kind of deferent to his shitty friend Tim.
Yes, and on top of that, too, we also do need to mention that Jeff is an amazing hot couch guy. The first moment we see him, he is sleeping in a tent in his parents' garage, and he wakes up and immediately starts smoking a cigarette. It's awesome.
So I've never been a smoker of cigarettes, but that is so real. Like, the tent in your parents' fucking garage is so fucking real.
It's so funny. I love it. That is such hot couch guy shit. It's like, yeah, man, let's fucking just chill out in the garage. I got a fucking tent, dude, and we're gonna smoke a bong, dude.
So you are making it sound more good vibes hot couch guy than I think it is. I think
it's more very bad hot couch guy.
It's not even like that though. It's like, I need to get the fuck out of this bedroom. I need to get the fuck away from my parents. I need to have some separation from this house. I'll put a fucking tent in the garage and I'll sleep out there.
Yes. And let's be clear here. Of course, we've mentioned Hot Couch Guys a million times in the show. And we've mentioned, of course, the very positive, aspirational elements of Hot Couch Guys. This is very, very bad vibes Hot Couch. These are very bad vibes Hot Couch people.
The thing is, it's hard when you're in it to know which is which. I would say a reformed Hot Couch guy. I got a little bit of Hot Couch in me. It's hard when you're in it to know which is which. The whole thing with Jeff, if we can put this in the goofiest way, is he could be a good vibes Hot Couch guy, but he's too fucking scared to do it, right? He's scared.
Yeah, he's fucking stuck.
Hold it to his
shoes gun. Exactly. So, but yes, we mentioned Tim. So he is a troubled heavy drinker with a knack for shooting off his mouth, which we will certainly get into. And Suze's friend BB, played by Dina Spivey, hangs out with the group this evening, and she has a very tragic end, which once again we will certainly get into.
Awful. We do got to talk about Buff.
Yes, so Buff is played by Steve Zahn. He is a guy who, I want to be clear here, this movie is set in Texas, although it was shot in Texas too, of course. He has the most Minnesota accent I've ever heard in a movie. They allowed him to have a Minnesota accent in Texas.
Yeah. Linklater heard that Minnesota accent and he went, oh, that sounds like a dumb guy.
Yeah!
I'm so fucking serious.
I mean, he does sound like a fucking yokel in this movie.
Yeah. Well, okay. So Duff in this movie, I've had friends that were kind of like Tim, that were like shitty, kind of like bad vibes guys like that, but not to that degree. I 100% had a friend who still hits me up on Facebook and sends me long rambling messages saying that they want to crash at my house when they're in Portland, which they're never, ever, ever going to be, who is just like Duff. I have had so many Duffs in my life. Taylor, you've met one of them.
I have, and I know exactly who you're talking about on top of it.
Yeah. Look, I wish the guy all the best. I was his friend when we were 5 years old. He's the first friend I ever had in my life, but he is fucking Duff. There are things in this movie, and also I've had some Tims in my life, but I'm not in contact with any of them. You know, I outgrew all those guys pretty quick. There are things that when I watch in this movie, they like awaken some feeling in me. The way that, like, the feelings that Jeff has, but also Tim and Duff are always doing this thing where they joke with him and they grab him in kind of aggressive ways, or they shove him and they're like, I'm kidding. And they triggered something in me. Every time I watch this, it does.
I don't even fucking blame you, man. I have a couple friends like that back home too, but I haven't talked to them in a really long time, including one friend who's like Duff, although definitely at this point I would say more good vibes Hot Couch, because apparently he got his life together after he joined the Navy.
And Duff might get, like, they're pretty young. Duff seems just, like, stupid and, like, just very dumb. He could get his life together. Tim, we'll get there.
Yeah, we'll get there. The group are expecting a visit from a high school friend, Pony, played by Jace Bartok, lead singer for Dreamgirl, an up-and-coming rock band that is on a stadium tour as the opening act for a major rock band. And we also need to talk about Pony. Pony is the guy that we all fucking knew at some point, right? Who, and obviously not nearly as famous as this, but they come back like, oh my god, Blank is coming back. And they come back like, yeah, dude, what's up? And they and they're still just as lame, and they're trying to hang out with their, like, townie friends or whatever the fuck, and you see them and like, why are you hanging out with us? Like, what the fuck?
I think the dynamic between Pony and Jeff, to me, is really interesting. So they only mention it really briefly a couple of times. Jeff was in an early incarnation of Dreamgirl. So, like, it seems like Jeff knows Pony. Jeff and Suze know Pony a little more than, like, all their other friends, because he's probably kind of in a different clique, because he's like this awkward, nerdy kid. One of the things we know about Pony is that him and Jeff were in an honors English class together, which presumably Tim and Duff were not in. So he's like a separate acquaintance that Jeff had, who my read is that maybe he was a little more sensitive around, and they were friends. Because Pony makes a point of wanting to see Jeff and talk to him. That's what when we are introduced to Pony before he's on screen, it's he wants to see Jeff. And Jeff is like embarrassed by that because he's with fucking Duff and Tim, right? His abusive fucking white trash hot couch friends. And that like colors the whole dynamic, is that they were friends that were on a similar trajectory. And now Pony is like a fucking rock star, which is ridiculous as it is, and Jeff is hanging out at the convenience store.
Yeah, he took one college class, which was the history of Nicaragua or some shit like that, which I think that does play into the ending of this movie, but of course we'll get into that when that happens.
It does, yeah.
Pony arrives with Erica, played by Parker Posey, Dreamgirl's publicist, which, by the way, Erica has amazing hair in this movie. It's awesome. It's like 30 years out of date, but she's supposed to be like this hip chick.
Well, the thing is that would have been really hip in 96, I think, because it's like a bouffant hairdo, and you would be coming up. This is right before Swing Revival, so I was thinking about that. I think that would have been a really edgy hairstyle in the 90s, because it's like retro 50s. You're taking like a 50s housewife style and being like a rocker chick with it, or a pseudo-rocker chick in this case.
That makes sense. Erica tells them how excited Pony has been about seeing the gang, and most of the group is glad to see him. Although some of them are bitter and jealous of his recent success. I mean, I would say they probably all are, except for Suze, I think. I mean, she's just excited to fucking shack up with Pony. But, you know, Tim and Duff are very aggressive. Well, not necessarily Duff, but definitely Tim is.
No, Duff is being passive aggressive. He's like belittling Pony, but still acting like his friend and trying to butter him up, but he's like teasing him. Tim is being like actively hostile. I do want to backtrack this too. So one of the things with Suze, right, is that she wants to do performance art and poetry. I have some issues with how Suze is written. I don't think Linklater is very good at writing women in general, and I don't think either, like, any of the women in this film are as well written as the male characters. But Suze is all right. Like, I mean, if you take her at face value, she's young and idealistic, and she's interested in like feminism, and like at least like she mentions like, you know, racial equality and things, and she's very silly, right? In a way that it almost comes off like a straw man of a feminist. But I think we can take it at face value that Linklater's kind of teasing her, but he doesn't like hate the character, right? He probably does see her as mostly good. But the reason I want to pull back is because my favorite part of the movie, because I identify so, like, young Brian would identify so much with this, because so much of it's Jeff acting like an asshole for no reason because he's frustrated, is Suze is sharing a poem she writes that's like about patriarchy and like male violence and things, right? And she reads this really impassioned poem that kind of sucks, to be honest. It's like funny to watch, but to her it's really special and important, and she's opening up to everyone. And Jeff says, "Is that supposed to be about me?" Just really defensive immediately.
I mean, when we were like 21, 22, we thought all of that with our girlfriends, like if they said anything.
Yeah, exactly. Like... oh, me? You think I'm like that? It's such a fucking dumb guy thing. It's so real. When I see it, I'm always like, oh my God, because I remember moments where I was like that.
Oh, Jesus. As the expanded group hangs out beside the store, their actions and conversations show that they all are contemplating what they want to do with the rest of their lives, which is true. Like, you know, obviously, once again, Jeff, he says he just doesn't really want to do anything, like, at the end of the day. I think he feels, obviously, a sense of, like, I guess, confusion, and obviously just he's trying to find something to care about, but he just can't be bothered to right now. He strikes me as somebody who's severely depressed.
He's severely depressed, and so the rut that Jeff has gotten himself in, and the reason that he stays friends with Duff, but especially why he stays friends with Tim, is because he kind of wants to write in some vague sense, and he never is clear on what. He's like, oh, I do a little bit of writing, and I think we've all been there. You have a little project that's kind of vague in you, but it's not really a thing that you do it non-committally instead of really investing in it, so that if it doesn't pan out, you don't feel bad. And that's the same reason he doesn't leave. He's gonna stay in this town, and he's upset that he's here, but he feels safer just staying in his hometown and feeling superior to everyone around him than, you know, chancing taking a limb out and leaving and going somewhere, or trying to write something serious and it not working. The thing that him and Tim have in common, although I think it's for different reasons, is that that's what they do. They feel intellectually superior to everyone, and maybe in Jeff's case a little bit morally superior as well.
Yes, the way I describe it is Jeff especially, I think he wants to be like the king of the molehill, essentially.
Yeah.
That's what he kind of wants to be.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Tim and Erica go off to have sex in a van, but Tim cannot perform, which is an amazing, like, lead-up scene, because Erica is just clearly trying to hit on him, and for whatever reason, obviously, I think she thinks she's better than him and is trying to get something, or maybe she's just, like, she sees this guy as kind of exotic, I guess, but, like, she is clearly trying way harder, because he doesn't even know her fucking name.
So I like this movie a lot. There's a lot in it that really connects for me. I don't like the way Erica's written. The whole idea that, like, Tim could riz her up so effectively, and, you know, he goes up and he hits on her by, like, having her pegged immediately and knowing all about her, and she's just like, wow, this complete psychopath who's fucking, like, verbally assaulting me. I need to fuck him right now. It's very annoying to me.
Brian, I just realized this is literally what pickup artists think
It
negging
is.
does.
No, that's the thing is that, like, I don't, I don't, like, moralize about movies, and I think it's a movie, not reality. But the film is portraying negging, and it's portraying it. The film does not think Tim is cool. You're supposed to view him as, like, a piece of shit. But in this instance, it's like, oh, this guy really sized up this woman and was able to kind of dress her down, and that made him really interesting to her. And I just don't, for someone like Erica in real life, especially she's a publicist for a successful rock band and she travels and she does all this shit. I just don't see a woman in that situation. Like, ideally, no woman would be sussed out by that stuff, but especially a woman who's done some cool, interesting shit. She'd be like, well, who the fuck are you to talk to me like this, you fucking hillbilly? So that's an element in this movie that does annoy me.
No, I 100% agree with it. It just didn't really make any sense. I'm going to be real here.
Yeah.
It almost seemed like a porno fantasy. I'm going to be honest. But
well, and the thing is that there's a reason that they have to end up going back there together to get the film to a certain point. But I just don't see those two characters linking up in that way. It could even just be if they'd made it more like that Erica is like, yeah, I think this dumb fucking trashy guy is kind of hot. I'll fuck him, whatever. That would be realistic. Then making it like, oh, he's such a master manipulator that he like figured her out is kind of annoying.
no, totally. BB is revealed to be a recovering alcoholic, and then Suze leaves town with Pony because obviously she just wants to get out of this shithole town, and Jeff is like, no, stay here. And she's like, why would I stay here?
Because the whole thing, right, is so Tim discourages Jeff from doing things that might make him want to leave. He's constantly telling him everything's a waste of time. I've traveled, I've seen it, everything is bullshit. And it discourages Jeff, because Jeff kind of, for whatever reason, he kind of wants to be like however he perceives Tim. Who he perceives, I guess, is like strong or whatever. Even though he also thinks he's racist and he thinks he's like an asshole sometimes. But Jeff is trying to do to Suze kind of what Tim does to him. To go like, no, you should stay here. It's more authentic to stay here in this shitty town.
Yeah, the shitty town where we all hang out by the gas station dumpster next to the Walgreens.
Yeah, the shitty town that we all hate, where all we talk about is how much we hate it. One small detail that I noticed that I want to touch is because it's really funny and it's just for these types of towns a good observation is I think 3 times throughout the film, Tim goes to a cigarette store to buy booze, and every time he's there, the clerk starts talking to Tim about high school football.
That's not only accurate for like Wisconsin, but it's also accurate for Texas. That's extremely
exactly. And Tim is just like, oh my god. And like Tim sucks obviously, but that's a very real thing. And then at one point he's talking to Tim about a high school football game that Tim was in, and Tim is like, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Eventually, Tim is arrested after trying to fight the gas station shopkeeper. While in the police car, he tells Jeff that he knocked Erica unconscious and left her in the van. Which, by the way, they keep talking about the van. Why is everybody hooking up in the goddamn van? Like,
well, because it's
the mutual hookup van.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty realistic. More in high school than when you're their age. Like, I feel like by the time you're the age of the characters in this movie, at least a couple of your friend group has moved out of their parents. But in high school, I would say that there was probably, just like people would loan you their cars to like fuck or make out in, It's a little weird for them to have one at this age.
Yeah, like a 35-year-old man being like, yo, I'll let you rent out my car to fuck. It's like, for what, a video?
Yeah, exactly.
Hours later, Jeff meets up with Duff, who tells him that he slept with Erica and is planning to go to Los Angeles to shoot a Dream Girl music video. This turns out to be true as Erica shows up unharmed to pick up Duff. Which, by the way, once again, why did Tim even say that he, beat her unconscious anyways? Like, I don't understand. No, just to be a dickhead?
Here's why. It is to be a dickhead. It's because Tim wanted to exert his power over Jeff. Because everyone's talking about getting out. Jeff is fighting with Suze. Pony's in town. And Pony is actually trying to be supportive of Jeff and Suze, even though Jeff is being a huge asshole to Pony. Pony's a dork, but let's be honest, does seem to be trying to be a real friend to, Jeff, and Jeff kind of flips out on him. Tim, he's not gonna leave. He's this drunk loser, psychopath, narcissist whose whole thing is he sticks in this town and he feels superior to everyone. And he wants Jeff to continue to do that with him. So he's putting these ideas in Jeff's head, and then he's doing this really extreme show of, manipulation over Jeff. And actually, I think you could even read into it that maybe he does that to Jeff to make up for his inability to perform sexually with Erica. Because, and I'm not typically, not to get all Freudian, but, so Tim is trying to manipulate Erica by, sizing her up and negging her, and then he can't get it up to fuck her, right? So he's making up for that. Erica's like, I'm gonna go back to the hotel. She's going back to her, life of managing a rock star, and she's now bringing Duff and Suze with her, and would have probably brought Jeff with her if he hadn't had this little hissy fit while they were all hanging out, right? And Tim is now, he's both making up for that failure by putting Jeff down and serving the double purpose of keeping Jeff like in his station, alienated from this possible success and, stuck with him in their hometown.
No, that makes a lot of fucking sense. That makes a lot of fucking sense. So the next night, after Tim is released from jail, Jeff confronts him about lying, but Tim mocks Jeff for believing him. He then threatens who we now learn his name is Nazir. We learn at the very end of the movie, we finally get his name, with a gun. And by the way, we learn his name because Jeff is sort of like, okay, this has gone on way too fucking long. What if we just knew anything about each other? Then we wouldn't get into this bullshit. We're just wasting time and blah, blah. And I think that's where the taking the college class on Nicaragua comes in, right? Because he isn't like just some racist, like dumb, like shit kicker. Like he's somebody who once again is wanting to be more intellectual, wanting to care more, wanting to be like less cynical and shitty about the world. And he's like, oh, this is my chance to finally fucking stand up for like some weird like liberal ideal I believe in. But at the very last moment before a murder is about to happen.
Well, it's also, he does try to do it at various points throughout the movie, and then he pusses out. Not even because he's scared of Tim, but because he's scared of his disapproval, right? He starts to say like, hey, this guy, I think the first thing he says is, he's from a third world country. It's probably not that easy for him. There's also parts where he's like, hey, he hasn't done anything to you. You should leave. Which is already a weak assertion. And then he backs down on it when Tim says things like, oh, fuck you. They all smell. They live like, what does he say? They all
say like sardines in a can.
Sardines in a can. Yeah, shit like that.
No, totally. But yeah, so Tim is threatening Nazir with the gun and eventually diffuses the situation because he goes up, well, not necessarily diffuses, but he goes up on the roof, fires a few shots. And then we discover BB, who is once again our alcoholic blonde woman from before, unconscious after drinking hard alcohol. As they wait for medical help, Nazir berates Jeff, telling him he and his friends throw it all away, which I think you can interpret that in multiple ways. So obviously, first I can see it as, Nazir is, oh, and by the way, the actor is Ajay Naidu, I believe his name is. I forgot to put him in here. He was Samir in Office Space, which is, of course, another classic Gen X film, obviously. A fantastic movie, to be very clear.
Yeah.
But
great.
Anyways, so I think I can obviously interpret this in multiple ways. So once again, throw it away in the sense that this guy is a recent immigrant. Of course, he came here with probably very little, if nothing. I think he said his family owns the gas station, so he's either first or, second generation immigrant, I would say then. But either way, like, he's trying to get his shit together. He's going to engineering school, whatever. He's making something of himself, even if he's not in the best of situations right now. Whereas these guys were kind of given, like, the golden ticket of, like, modern economies, which was growing up in the 80s and 90s in the U.S., and they're wasting it being drunk degenerates, basically.
Well, there's that, and that is definitely one of the things he's saying. You also can read that on a more personal level. Like, he's talking to all of them, but I think in that moment, he's very specifically talking to Jeff, because there are interactions between Nasir and Jeff throughout the movie, both when he's trying to stick up for Nasir, half-heartedly, and then backing down when Tim and Jeff are harassing him. But there's interactions that they have between the two of them where, Nasir is going, why do you live like this? Why are you hanging out with these guys? So whenever Nasir is interacting with the gang, that's Duff, Jeff, Tim, when he looks at Jeff, he has this look of extreme disappointment. Even when he's being, violently harassed by Tim or just like mocked by Duff, who often just does like very racist accents imitating him. The way that he interacts with Jeff is a lot more downplayed, and he just looks very, disappointed and let down in him throughout the movie. So I think that there's some undercurrent of like, I don't know, maybe they've had interactions, between the two of them when Jeff is buying things at the store, or just, there's something in Jeff that Nasir recognizes in maybe his body language. But I think he might be saying, when he says throw it all away, he's saying that to Jeff, I think, for a reason. Like, obviously, he's stressed out that this woman might be dying on top of his store. He's upset by everyone. They're all throwing it all away. But Jeff may be more than Duff and Tim, who are like bad people and losers, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because even though Jeff, of course, is cynical and he's angry and he's a dick, but like, he's got a chance. He's got a chance at being a good person. He's clearly got like the underpinnings, the subconscious of a good person. But he's stuck just in this fucking shithole, basically, of a small town with these toxic people around him.
Well, and he's constantly blathering on about this. We talk about how Gen X this idea is. Jeff is constantly talking about authenticity, this very narrow idea of authenticity, which basically just means not doing anything ever. Talking yourself out of believing in or attempting anything because that would be inauthentic. And I think that is Linklater being a little self-aware about the Gen X-iness of the character, not a little, but very self-aware about it, and kind of well identifying with young people in this situation also being pretty critical of that apathy.
No, absolutely. Yeah. This is a very, I would argue, very pivotal Gen X masterpiece, but basically nobody's seen it. This was not a movie that a lot of people saw, unfortunately, which is sad because, like I said, I think this is a pivotal Gen X masterpiece in the same way that like fucking Mallrats is or like Clerks is.
Yeah, I definitely think there's a lot of, they're very different movies, totally different, their themes are different, but there is a lot of, I think, Clerks influence in Suburbia. From what I gather, I think this film has Linklater fans, because he does have, he's a pretty successful and popular director, but he also has his own cult audience, and he has kind of different fan bases as far as I can gather, because you've got your, like, set of fans who love the Before trilogy, right? You've got a set of fans who like his, like, films within the last 15 years or so, but does seem to be a specific group of people who love like this and Dazed and Confused, who those are their Linklater films. And I think in that group, this film seems to be pretty highly regarded. I saw a few discussions on Reddit and things, which I sometimes see that just to see what like, I went to like our Linklater just to see what the pulse of the community was. And it seems like people who are into him really like this movie, but it doesn't have a broader audience the way his other films do.
No, very much so. But yeah, so that is the synopsis here. And I think before we get into our final thoughts, Brian, let's get into some Amazon reviews. Now, I will say I did not find any negative reviews that I wanted to highlight here. Honestly, most of them were not very interesting, although one of them was, but it was so poorly like spelled with so many grammatical and formatting errors that it literally was unreadable. So I decided not to include it on here. Although what I could parse from it was funny, but it was incomprehensible even for an Amazon review, and that's saying something. It was bad. But
someone schizo posting on the Suburbia review page.
I think it was, and I read their like Amazon like description, and it was even more so. It wasn't like Vicky Huffnagel level, but it was pretty bad. It was pretty bad.
Oh, we gotta check in on Vicky.
I did actually, maybe about a week ago, and unfortunately, no new updates. Unfortunately, no new updates.
Maybe that's for the best.
Yeah, right. But speaking maybe for the best, so let's get into our first Amazon review here from Bruce, who gives us 5 stars. And the head of the review says, "Awesome movie. Thanks, Amazon." And the body of the review says, "I love this film. It is very well done. I think we can all relate to at least one character in this film, or at least know someone like it," which I don't know if that's really true. I think there's a lot of people who don't relate to any of the characters in this movie. And that's not to be a good or bad thing, but like, I don't know, if you're a like Bangladeshi academic, you might not relate too much to this movie, I'm going to be honest with you.
No.
Outside of maybe Nazir, but...
Yeah, but I think you could relate to that character. I would actually say I think that Jeff is a pretty universal character, at least in a general way. Jeff and Tim less so. I would kind of agree that we've all, to some degree, been in the situation that Jeff is in, and we've all had some friends that were kind of like Jeff and Tim, although maybe not to the extreme.
That's true, Brian. I actually do know a Tim in
That's me.
Real life.
I'm the Tim in your life.
Yo, you... Oh boy, Brian, you're always... Well, to be fair, you are always wearing like fucking sleeveless shirts all the time.
My TCB tattoo?
Yeah. But no, I think you're right. I was just like nitpicky there, but I think you are correct. Oh, Jesus. I remember first seeing this late night while I was a sophomore in high school. I was hooked. Every time this movie came on, I had to watch it. I am glad Amazon picked this up because it is impossible to find on DVD. I don't understand that about movies. How do they go out of print? Why? Okay, so
that is stupid. No, that is stupid, right? I mean, this guy's a dumbass. You can tell by the way he says it, but he is right. At this day and age, nothing should go out of print.
No, objectively speaking, other than, I don't even know if there's like a tax write-off purpose like with WB does it anymore. Like, why don't they just have it for like $1 on YouTube? Like, they'd still make some money on it. Like, Jesus.
Like, now all kinds of films and TV shows are quote-unquote out of print because of streaming, which is a whole different fucking bullshit thing.
No, totally. Okay, so maybe some of these studios go under, but other studios could buy their rights. Though some of them, he put then, not them, are still going strong. So why stop making the movie? Anyways, thanks Amazon for adding this to own. 5-star movie. You won't be disappointed. So thank you very much for that advertisement for Amazon Video Service.
Also, this is literally free on YouTube. Multiple channels have the whole movie free on YouTube, so you can just watch it.
Yeah. I literally just looked up Suburbia Richard Linklater and it was the first one in like
there's
HD quality.
Yeah, there's like 3 different accounts that have the whole 2-hour movie in HD on YouTube.
It's funny, Brian, because all the Amazon entries were like, I paid $20 for this.
Okay, if you can't find a movie, or if, you know what, do a cursory search on YouTube. Because I know there aren't supposed to be movies on there, but there are.
Oh, there's plenty. And I'm kidding about the $20, but they basically all mentioned, like, I paid good money for this. And I'm like, really?
Yeah. I mean, so I'm going to be honest, I've kind of forgot how to torrent. I'm not as good at it as I used to be at finding shit. So I rent movies from, like, streaming services now, which is so fucking dumb. But I used to torrent everything, and now I'm like, I want to watch it on my fucking TV. Like, I'll pay the $5. You know, it makes me feel like such a fucking pleb.
You watch it on your phone and you just think like, oh my God, David Lynch would love this. He would just love the idea of me watching a movie on my fucking phone.
This is the best way to watch movies. It's so great. They should start shooting movies specifically for the phone screen.
That is still, by the way, my favorite David Lynch clip ever. He is so funny in that. He's always like, it's so sad why people like what people do nowadays. But you know what? If you watch movies on your fucking phone, get real. And he's like, he has like empathy for like 5 seconds and immediately gets like fiery angry about it.
He gets himself worked up. Oh, another great David Lynch clip is you should look up him talking about the moon.
The moon? Interesting.
Yeah,
I'll have to look that one
check it out.
Hell yeah, dude. All right, and then our next Amazon review here is also a 5-star one from J.W. Kausman, who says, I loved the movie, hated the service, loved the response. So all these reviews are basically about Amazon Prime.
You hated the service?
So the body of the review says, I haven't seen this movie in years, so imagine my surprise when I saw that Amazon had it, in HD no less, for streaming. The $4.99 price wasn't too bad for a hard-to-find movie like this. Well, it's not anymore, but who knows, maybe when this review was written it was, but it certainly isn't now.
Has it not gotten like a quality DVD release? Like maybe the only DVD release it got was like really low quality or bare bones or something? I don't know.
I think it was. I think it just got a pretty bare bones DVD release in like the early 2000s or something. I'd have to double check.
Like everything?
Yeah, like everything. The picture and sound was great. Well, let me rephrase. The picture and sound was great when it was working. Amazon video streaming via Xbox is beyond poor. The movie is about 2 hours long, but it took me just shy of 3 because after the first hour, the movie would need to buffer every 5 minutes.
You put that in your review of the movie? I don't understand these people, Taylor.
If it didn't need to buffer, the app would randomly say it lost connection, and I'd have to get out of the program. I love Amazon, and I wish I could blame it on my setup, but I was pulling down
Amazon.
A solid 15 megabytes per second the entire time, and Netflix worked without a hitch after I gave up. In full disclosure, my nerd rage went out of control, and I took to Twitter and vented all my frustration about the service, and I swore I'd never use it again.
I'm such a nerd that I use Amazon, and I rent movies through Amazon, and I love Amazon because I'm such a nerd. Fuck out of here.
To my surprise, Amazon found my tweets a few days later and sent me a full refund of price of the movie without me ever asking for it. Oh, and by the way, this last one is one of the funniest things I've read in a long time. So get ready for this one. I work at a law firm, and every day I hear countless stories of people getting nickel and dimed by huge companies. But Amazon did the exact opposite.
See, okay, so we make fun of Gen Xers for being all cynical and being like shit like Adbusters and guys like Jeff. But then you think about like people like this and you're like, no, they were right.
Yeah.
This is like an Adbusters ass person.
They didn't have to do what they did, but they went out of their way to make up for the poor streaming. If I wasn't an Amazon customer for life before, I am one now. Keep up the great work.
You fucking loser. Oh my God, I hate this person so much. This is fucking NPC behavior.
It really is
This is the most NPC shit I've ever heard in my life. When you're on a side quest and someone says, I love Amazon. My movie didn't work when I rented it from them, but they refunded me.
Yeah. Oh, Jesus. And I got one last one, Brian, and this was one I had to include in here because this one's made me say, what the fuck? For the first time in a few episodes, this one made me say, what the fuck? Because this person is insane. And I'm going to dox this person here. So Kevin Killian gives us 5 stars. And the header of the review says, yes, but... And the body of the review says, people say, why isn't Song of the South on DVD? Well, I say, why isn't Richard Linklater's Suburbia on DVD?
So just to answer our question, it does seem like there was a period of time where you couldn't find this movie. But
No, it
with the
seems
Song
like
of the
that.
South, the reason this wasn't on DVD was probably because of rights issues, or maybe just because, like, probably rights issues. That's not why Song of the South isn't on DVD. Does this person think that Suburbia didn't get a home video release because it was racist?
Oh, a lot of the Amazon reviews were like, this movie's kind of racist. That's probably why it doesn't have a DVD release. And I'm like, that's not why. And to be clear, the racist guys are the bad guys.
No. So, yeah, I already told you, Taylor, I have a read on this movie. That's going to be my final thoughts on it.
Oh, hell yeah. But yeah, so the review gets even better. His brilliant study of disaffected 20-year-olds longing for success in the parking lot of a 7-Eleven knockoff made his previous films Slacker and Dazed and Confused look like variety show skits. And yet so many of us have never gotten a chance to see this movie. They say that Disney is wary of releasing Song of the South because of its patronizing use of black actors to embody racial stereotypes. Same is true with Suburbia.
It's patronizing. What?
Which has some nasty racial stereotypes from the Chinese restaurant to which some of the characters repair while hungry. You're comparing Song of the South with Suburbia's racism. Are you fucking kidding me?
Is this a joke?
I don't think it's a joke. I think this person's being legitimate.
They're accusing this movie of being very racist while saying they like it. Like, what?
Once again, to be clear, Richard Linklater is very aware of the racism in this movie, whereas Song of the South was not very self-aware.
I would say, no, it's literally a white supremacist manifesto. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, come the fuck on. There's a reason why it hasn't been re-released in the U.S. There's obviously a fucking reason for it. I mean, Jesus Christ.
This guy, like, hears a rap song where they say, like, the N-word, and he goes, oh, so this guy can put out his record, but you can't get the Song of the South on DVD. Pretty racist.
He's like, you know what? If Nas can put out something, I should be able to watch fucking
Birth
of a Nation.
They released Birth of a Nation and just called Untitled Film.
Yeah. So yes, those are our amazing, intelligent Amazon patriots who gave very concise, amazing opinions on this film and only this film, clearly. They're very smart people. Which, like I said, though, half the reviews were like, there's some racist moments in this movie. And it's like, but that's like a pretty essential element of the film.
Yeah, that's pretty typical for our Amazon reviews, I guess.
Yeah, a lot of dipshits in there. But, speaking of potential dipshits, Brian, let's get into our final thoughts here with our Amazon reviews out of the way. So, Brian, go ahead, because I have some opinions of my own.
So, for me, this is my favorite Linklater film. I think the performances are really solid. I also think mostly thematically it really ties together. There is still some Linklater-esque dialogue that sometimes grates on me, but mostly I think it's really good. I don't think any of the women in this film are particularly well written, especially compared to the men who I think are all pretty well realized. So I think, and I don't think that this is Linklater's intention, no. This film is kind of a study in how fascism rots the brains of disaffected young white middle class men, I think. So early on in the film, Buff calls Tim a neo-fascist, and it's kind of a joke, right? He's calling Tim a fascist because Tim tells him he needs to take his fucking rollerblades off. And you're kind of joking because Duff's a dumbass. But it kind of seems like they're playing up the idea to put that in your head that Tim's kind of a fascist. And as we learn more about him, he pretty explicitly is. He talks about immigrants needing to go back, pulls a gun on them. He's got very violently misogynistic tendencies and is constantly telling, putting into Jeff's idea the idea that his girlfriend is cheating on him, that they're all whores. And these ideas are all sort of infecting Jeff. It's not just Tim, it's this whole world around him and it's his own tendencies, but it's sort of this undercurrent of simmering reactionary thought that his friend, who's kind of older and appears to him to be more organized and more authoritative, is kind of leaking into his brain. That leads him to be depressed and, further alienated. And towards the end of the film, Jeff almost becomes violently misanthropic to the, not to the level Tim is, but he starts acting out in a similar way. I think that you could make an argument that this film, is a study on alienation in young men. And like I said, particularly young, middle class white men, and how sort of certain resentments and some valid feelings of feeling left behind, or not left behind, but of feeling alienated or unsure about their future, which everyone experiences. Everyone experiences, can make them not defenseless, but kind of weaken their guard to these toxic things that can ultimately kind of rot their brains and ruin their lives. I think in real time, we're kind of watching that happen to Jeff. The ending is left pretty ambiguous, right? Jeff is kind of at a crossroads, and it seems like maybe he'll, break away from Tim and he'll take the experiences of this couple days away from him and try to do something better or be something better and let go of this weird authenticity hang up. But he might well just go back to hanging out with Tim again by the convenience store and doing whatever he says.
No, absolutely, yeah. And also, Brian, misogyny and also deep homophobia, too, because there's so much homophobia here.
There is.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And for my final thoughts, I definitely wouldn't say this is my favorite Linklater movie, which is obvious. I mean, Before Sunrise is my favorite so far anyways. But I did really like this movie quite a bit. I would say it's probably in the middle for me on Linklater. I would say it's probably my third or fourth favorite Linklater movie. But I'll agree with basically all of your points, especially on the, fascism element. And I also do find it interesting, too, that I feel like this movie is kind of ahead of the curve a little bit on a social media controversy, or I should say a social media, like, trend-ish, or I don't even know how to describe it, but the whole sort of thing that happened in, like, the mid-2010s or whatever with the sort of social media revisionism over Apu in The Simpsons, which I think is really interesting.
Oh,
because this character is like, at first in the movie, he's like, oh, this is just a racial stereotype of a, South Asian gas station owner or whatever. But, like, as the movie goes along, he becomes just as much of a fleshed out character as everybody else pretty quickly. Whereas the whole criticism of Apu is that he is a racial stereotype, which that's not really true in The Simpsons either. I think he becomes way more of a fleshed out character as the series goes along, right? But this movie, I think, did it even before The Simpsons did it, because this movie came out like 1996 or something. So I think it's interesting that this movie was pretty ahead of the curve on that.
Yeah, Nasir kind of has his own arc going on and his own internal conflicts. So one thing that this film does really is it sprinkles in little bits of information or little short interactions that you can infer a lot about a character's kind of deeper personality from. And Nasir has some things going on. He has, of course, he's going to school, he's running his parents' store, he's doing all these other things. But on top of that, he and his wife are running the store, and he's being violently harassed by like this scary fucking dirtbag guy and Tim, and he's himself feeling this conflict of like being afraid of this guy and also feeling like embarrassed that he's not able to stand up to him, embarrassed that he's not able to like take care of his parents' store or have his wife feel safe, and feeling that kind of conflict in himself. And it's really subtle, but I do think it's intentional.
No, absolutely. In fact, Nazir and Jeff are like equal to me as my favorite characters in this movie. I like both those characters quite a bit.
Agreed. And you kind of wish, you're kind of like, oh, maybe like Tim could just, if Tim had like died in the Air Force, maybe Jeff would be like hanging out at the convenience store on his way to work and talking to Nazir.
Well, that's the thing, Brian. In real life, Jeff went to school and then became a like mining executive and went to the planet Pandora, which is a joke about because Giovanni Ribisi was the mining executive in Avatar. But that's neither here nor there. That's my Giovanni Ribisi Avatar reference that I'm going to use here. But yeah, so anyways, once again, I did like this film quite a bit. I think this is absolutely a hot couch guy classic, but definitely a bad vibes hot couch guy classic, I will say. And that's like Steve Zahn was in a lot of hot couch guy movies in like the 90s and 2000s. Like he is like one of the preeminent like hot couch guy actors.
Well, like, this is almost like a movie, there are a lot of hot couch guy movies that hot couch guys like or can identify with. This is a movie, I think, that is both for the hot couch guy, but also kind of about them. And it's a movie that I think hot couch guys that we knew could have seen and maybe could have resonated with them on kind of a deeper level than, say, like, I don't know, what else did they like Without a Paddle or whatever.
Oh, yep, I know exactly that movie. That's also a very fun movie. I like that movie quite a bit. Or at least
Seth Green, right?
Yeah, Seth Green, and they're looking for DB Cooper. Yeah. All right, so, yep, with our final thoughts out of the way, let's get to our pluggables here. So, you can follow me at Carlos Chantor on Twitter.com. And as well, please follow us on and subscribe to us on both our YouTube and our Spotify channel, where we are uploading every episode simultaneously to both platforms. And as well as always, please donate to the Lucifer and the Father campaign. Of course, our good friends Scott, Sean, and Robert are creating a fantastic series. They need more moral and financial support before their series can get off the ground. I believe last when I checked, they are about 25% to their goal. I believe they're 20% like a couple episodes ago when I last checked. So they're getting there slowly, but of course they need all of the support that we are reasonably able to give them. And speaking of, as always, our offer still stands that if you donate to the campaign, just send us a YouTube comment, send us an email, just show us any proof that you donated to the campaign, and we will, within reason, about $20-25 match your donation. So please donate to the campaign because we want Scott, Sean, and Robert's dream show become a reality. And as well, of course, as always, another campaign that we both very much believe in is the Luigi Mangione Defense Fund. Of course, it's now been official for the last couple weeks now. Of course, we believe in Luigi. At this very moment, if he went to trial, he'd be found not guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. We, of course, want the best possible representation for him, which is why we believe in our fans and us giving Luigi the donations and support, both and also on social media as well. Of course, talk about how cool he is, and of course, not necessarily how cool he is, like how hot he is necessarily, but just, of course, talk about the lack of evidence against him. Just do anything positive. Keep him in the news cycle because we believe in our boy Luigi, and we want him to have a free and fair trial, and ideally to get the best possible sentence for him, either way, not guilty or guilty. We just need all the support we can give to him at this very moment.
Yeah.
Like, once again, Luigi is like Goku, and we are trying to give him the energy for his spirit bomb right now.
Well, and when you talk about him too, I mean, remember, like, please emphasize, we should all keep talking about him. Obviously, please donate to his legal funds, whatever you can. Just like, we both have, and I'm sure we will probably continue to in the future. But it's also, when you talk about him, make sure to emphasize they don't have any real evidence. When I talk to people, like in my day-to-day life, a lot of them think that he confessed. A lot of them think that they have all this evidence that they don't have. Because that's kind of where the media left it. It was a big public show trial until everyone liked him and they shut the case. And a lot of people just assume that they have all of this evidence, that they have DNA evidence, that he has said that he did it, that he's given all this information, all of these things that just aren't true. But that is kind of where a large portion of the public are, whether they think that he's guilty or not. And no, if he went to trial, he should rightfully be found not guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, because they have nothing.
They have fucking nothing on him. Like, remember when, like, the original, like, mugshot was taken and they saw that he had, like, a bunch of jackets on? Yeah, mass-produced jackets that anybody could fucking buy. Like, I mean, come on. Or also a gun, which, by the way, something like 40% of Americans own a gun. Like, that doesn't mean anything.
It means fucking nothing.
And also, when they arrested him, they didn't Mirandize him for 17 minutes, which basically made all of that initial, like, fucking arrest completely illegitimate. Like, it's amazing.
Yeah, illegally searched him. Also, this manifesto that they keep saying they refuse to supply his attorney with. Like, what manifesto? Like, what are you calling a manifesto?
Yes, and I believe you mentioned in the last episode, but, like, his attorney had to watch an HBO documentary about him to get any information because they are not letting her on any information in the discovery process.
Yeah, they've basically been boxed out of the discovery process, which that alone is grounds for a mistrial, by the way, like, obviously.
Exactly. So, once again, we believe in Luigi. If you obviously feel passionate about this just as much as we do, please donate to the campaign. We both have at this point. We believe in Luigi. We believe in Luigi. We believe in his innocence, for fucking sure.
Absolutely.
All right, and Brian, do you have any pluggables?
Yeah, follow us at Millennials Are Old Pod on Instagram and Threads. You can also follow me at JLo Biafra on Threads. That is, again, the most optimal way to argue with us, to harass us, to send us cringe content that we can discuss. If you want to hit me up for money, I will see what I can do. Maybe I can pay you to listen to the podcast and promote it. We'll do a little payola under the table with all my big bucks. No, yeah, please follow us at Millennials Are Old Pod and the Millennials Are Old Facebook page. I do need to jump back into checking out on the Billy Jack Facebook group, because someday we'll dip our toes back into the Tom Laughlin river, I think. We want to take a little bit of a break from it for a while, but I do need to check in with those folks. I'm sure they're going crazy, what with Trump in office now. There's probably some real lively discussions happening on the Billy Jack fan page on Facebook these days.
Oh, absolutely. All right, so, speaking of, obviously, everybody getting fired up, of course, we're talking about Luigi, of course, we're talking about this film, obviously. I'm feeling like Jeff right now, and the fact that I want to get completely naked and go to bed. I'm kidding, obviously, but that was a fantastic scene, by the way, because seeing Giovanni Ribisi's ass and dick in this movie, by the way, uncut. I don't know if you saw that.
Very brave.
Very brave, especially for a guy who was only in, like, 2 other movies before this or whatever, so pretty brave. That's why he was able to be in fucking Avatar later on.
Yeah,
James Cameron saw this movie and he's like, ooh, that looks really good, uncut. That's why I want you to be fully clothed in my movie. He's like, my CG's really good, but, like, we can never CG Giovanni Ribisi's uncut dick in this movie.
We could never match it, yeah. The true story, I've never seen Avatar.
Really?
Yeah.
That is awesome. Maybe we'll review it for the show. We won't. But maybe we should review it for the show, but we won't. But I will say, Brian, I have now seen both of them multiple times, and I'm going to see the third one when it comes out because I'm very excited about it. I wouldn't say they're, like, great films, but they are, like, CGI masterpieces.
I mean, I like Cameron. I'm not opposed to seeing them. I just never have. I like James Cameron, of course.
Yeah, I wouldn't say they're, like, obviously mind-blowing films, but they're enjoyable. I will say that. And not only that, Brian, but of course, course, I think it was Sean, I believe. He actually directed a movie with the guy who played the main villain, Stephen Lang, I believe.
Oh, maybe we should get him on to guest and we'll do a little Avatar party. We'll do a live stream where we all watch it together.
Exactly. Let's get Sean Justice back on to review Avatar, where it's like, what was it like working with Stephen Lang? And he's like, it was a long time ago.
It was fine. It was
fine.
It was very professional. And we're like, okay.
Yeah, exactly. All right, but have a good night, everybody. Sleep tight, and don't let Tim visit you in your sleep because it would not be a very positive experience.
Yeah, he wouldn't be able to get it up.
That's true. All right, have a good night, everybody.